So I get questions from people who are planning to go to law school or even current law students. Some want to know, how do I pay for law school? Do I pay with student loans? Do I get scholarships? Should I work and go to law school? What the heck is the Socratic method? Should I join organizations? I'm going to talk about all these questions and more today in our video. So stay tuned. Okay, so the first question I'm going to talk about is, how do you pay for law school? Some people want to know, how do you cover your rent and expenses? Because unlike undergrad, where you may have lived on campus or lived at home, many people who go to law school actually have their own apartments. And so how do we pay for all these things? Okay, so we're going to talk about the three main ways people pay for law school. The first one is student loan debt. If you watch my student loan video, you know that about 80% of the population has some sort of student loan debt. And so student loans will be one way that you can pay for law school. What happens is you get approved for a certain amount, and basically you use that to pay your tuition and your living expenses. So you have to be careful with this, because you could get a big chunk of money and blow it on living expenses if you lived in the finest apartment during law school, or you can actually find ways to save money on that end. Personally, I went to a law school that wasn't particularly expensive, but I actually went to school in an expensive area. And so the cost of living was actually high. And so you have to factor that into when you're deciding which law school to go to and how much student loans you should take out. Basically, you want to make sure that you're not taking out too much or enough that will you can pay when you graduate from law school. Think about what kind of job you have. Is it going to be a high-paying job that you'll be able to pay back these student loans with no problem? Or should you err on the side of caution and find a way to minimize your expenses while you're in law school? So student loan debt, you'll have a financial advisor who will tell you this is your student loan package. And let's say they give you $30,000 for the school year. You'll divide that, you subtract your tuition and things associated with school, law school, and then you'll have a chunk of it left for, how do I pay for my apartment? And then that's when you can go looking for apartments and say, okay, based on this amount, this is how much I have to pay for the whole school year. And I would say the whole school year plus maybe even the summer months, because how else will you pay for the summer months while you're waiting to go to the next school year and waiting for your financial aid package? I would make sure that it would last you 12 months just to have a buffer so you're not waiting for your student loan package the next year. So one way is student loans. Another way people pay for law school is through scholarships and actually working while going to law school. And so scholarships, you can actually apply for scholarships directly with the law school. A lot of them have merit-based scholarships that you can apply for that can take down the cost of what the tuition is. I will always apply for free money. Don't be afraid to ask. The worst they can say is no. And then you can actually go scouring the internet and find independent scholarships that may help fund you to go to law school as well. And then you have a chunk of people that actually work while going to law school. I would say it's very challenging to work and go to law school. It's not impossible, but it's very challenging because of the demands of law school, the demands of reading and studying and researching. And so I would say if you are working and going to law school, perhaps you're a part-time student and that's how you would pay for the tuition. Perhaps you're married and your spouse is paying all the living expenses, so you only have to worry about paying the tuition, which will be good in the long run not to have any loans. I know personally, during my second year of law school, I was a teaching assistant, and so I made some money that helps supply my bills for, let's say, my food bill or clothing. And so it wasn't a lot of money, but it was a supplement to not have to use loan money to pay for those things. And so I'll talk a little bit more about teaching assistant later, but that's another way. It's a work study program where you're working and they know that you're going to school. So it's usually about 20 hours a week maximum that you can work, but that can help fund your law school experience as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is the Socratic method, or cold calling as some people may call it. So law school is known for this method of teaching where the professor, you're in the classroom, you have a lot of students, and then the professor just calls out on people randomly. And you always have to be ready, or you perhaps may be embarrassed.
Yeah, be prepared. Yeah, we'll be prepared.
And it's a basic back and forth of question answer between the professor and the student. So this is not your typical what you saw in undergrad where you're in the lecture hall and you just talk that. This is very interactive. And interactive to the point of you don't want to be embarrassed. You want to make sure that you're prepared for whatever the cases that they're going to talk about or the issues they're going to talk about, because the professor may call on you and you never know. If you watch my other video about how to study for law school and things I wish I knew before law school, there are definitely ways to work smarter and not harder and beat the Socratic method and not feel embarrassed and still be prepared for every class. But basically, that's what the Socratic method is. Always be on, because you can be called on to analyze an issue or a case at any given time. And so this is not relaxed, fall asleep in class kind of setting that you may have experienced in undergrad. So comment below. Let me know who's a first year student, who is trying to go into law school next year. I want to hear what questions do you have about law school? Have I answered some of your questions already? Did I clear up anything that you thought was the answer? Let me know in the comment section. All right, let's talk about grades in law school and how that fits into the bigger picture. It can affect a couple of things. You making it past your first year of law school, because as I mentioned in other videos, the first year they scare you to death. And so you want to survive your first year of law school. So that's why grades are important. Some people are looking to transfer after their first year. And so grades are important because you want to have the highest grades if you try to transfer to another law school. And then law review. Law review is the school's publishing. And basically, if you want to be an editor, associate editor, or editor-in-chief of law review, you have to have a certain grade point average to actually grade onto law review. So let's talk a little bit about law review. There are two ways usually to get on law review at most schools. Like I mentioned, you have to have a certain grade point average, usually a 3.0, 3.5 for some law schools. And so that way it demonstrates that you have a certain foundation of what is going on in the classes, and you're able to be able to be a good writer. When you're on law review, you're an editor. You're basically editing articles that professors have written. Sometimes there are articles that other students have written in the past. And your job is basically to edit it, to see if it's fact check it, to make sure the cases cited are correct cases, make sure they are formatted correctly based on the Bluebook. So that's basically an indicator when you're on law review. It looks like it's attractive to other prospective employers when you graduate, whether you want to be a clerk, work at big law, or in government. Showing that you were on law review seems like a plus as far as when you're deciding which job you want to go to after law school. So one way to get on law review is to have a high grade point average. Another way is if you actually write on, and usually it's a write-on competition where you're given a topic to write on, and you have a certain amount of pages to write, and they're deciding whether you know how to use the Bluebook. We'll talk about that a little later, but using the Bluebook is basically showing that you have a certain format for law school papers or just legal papers. And so you can write on and get into law review that way if you didn't actually make it to the GPA requirement for grading onto law review. So overall, grades are important. I mentioned if you want to transfer to another law school, some people didn't get into their number one choice the first go around. So what they do is go to any law school that accepted them, try to get the highest grade point average and say, hey, look, I demonstrated that I can survive the first year of law school, and then try to transfer to another law school after their first year. So grades are important. I would say that they impact you in different ways. A lot of times when you graduate, some of these employers are asking for your first year grades. They're not an end all be all, but you want to try your hardest your first year, especially to make sure that you have a certain grade point average. Okay, so I mentioned Bluebook when I talked about grades, and the Bluebook is a citation book. In your first year of law school, you'll have a legal research and writing course, and you'll get really intimate with the Bluebook. And you'll think that, oh, it's nothing in here that talks about how to cite this particular case or how to cite this particular periodical. But once you get really into the Bluebook, you'll realize that there's a lot of information in it. And this is going to be your friend even when you finish law school. I still use the Bluebook to make sure that my citations are good for things that I don't use on a regular basis. But that's what the Bluebook is. If people talk about it, this is what the Bluebook is. Okay, so when you're in law school, you'll probably get inundated with requests to join different organizations. the Black Law Student Organization, the Federalist Papers Organization, the Constitutional Society Organization, Pi Alpha Delta Organization. There are a lot of organizations in law school, and you can decide which ones you have time for. I would say I didn't join any my first year, just because I didn't know if that would be too much of an obligation from the organization and the first year of classes. So I sat out all organizations the first year. So if you deciding, hey, is it going to be bad if I don't join anything? It won't. You'll be fine. I joined the second year and I joined the third year as well. But the first year I didn't join any. There are some benefits to joining. Some of them offer their members access to outlines from previous students. So you'll have like an in. Some of them do study sessions to help if you have questions on different topics. They have their members be part of study groups or study sessions. Some of them just have social hours. So if you just need to unwind and have people that you can talk to and relate to, they have those kind of organizations as well. And then some of them actually have things where you can give back to the community, which I like because you basically are volunteering your time to help out a particular underserved community. And that's what the organization is part about. So take your time. You don't have to join anything your first year, but you can, as long as you can balance out passing classes and volunteering or participating in those events, then go ahead and do it. I get this question, and more so than I thought. It's how do you dress for law school? So yes, this is different from undergrad, but in a sense that it's basically up to you how you dress. I know my first semester of law school, I dressed like I was going to work. I didn't go straight from undergrad to law school. I worked for a year before I started law school. And so I was in a mindset that this is a job. I need to come to law school like it's a job, do my work, and do well so that I can stay in law school for the 3 years. So I dress in business casual every day. And it's not necessary because some people have regular clothes on like they did in undergrad. As long as you have a certain mental mindset and it doesn't distract you from what you're there for, there's no dress code per se as far as what you should be wearing to law school. So if you feel relaxed but can also focus, then wear relaxing clothes. If you need to wear business casual or business professional, wear that as well. I saw a variety of things. I don't think one way or another will affect how you're going to be successful or not in law school. Okay, another question people have are what kind of classes I'm going to have in law school? Is it like undergrad? No. Basically, your first year classes, most of you guys are going to have the same classes. You're going to get into the electives after you finish your first year of law school. But most law students, their first year, they're going to have torts 1, criminal law, civil procedure, contracts. You might have property and legal research and writing. And in the second semester, you'll have part 2. So you have torts 2, civ pro 2, property 2, legal research and writing, and contracts 2. And so everybody has those same classes. Their first year classes, they're basically the foundation of your whole law school career. So pay attention to those classes. And the legal research and writing classes are going to overlap with a lot of these classes. They'll teach you how to write things, and then you'll use those same concepts to write law school exams. So pay attention. There's definitely an overlap between the classes. You might think they operate outside of each other, but they don't. Criminal law, for the first semester, you'll have criminal procedure. But you have to know the law before you figure out how it's applied in procedure. So they have a method to their madness as far as how the classes go. Once you get into your second year, you'll have more freedom as far as what classes you select. I did a clinic my second year and my third year, which was part of our law school curriculum. Some law schools make it an option. I would say if you can do at least one clinic, try to do at least one clinic because it gives you basically hands-on experience. All the stuff you've been learning in your classes, it lets you apply them with actual live clients. And so I say there's no substitution for that. So keep in mind that there are different classes you can take, but there are certain foundations that you actually have as well. So how do you survive law school? That is with some difficulty for some. For some, law school is a breeze. It was not a breeze for me, but I still made it and I felt accomplished when I finished it because it definitely was challenging. And so working smarter, not harder. Check out the other law school videos that show you different things I wish I knew, better ways to study, how to maximize getting internships and getting jobs after law school. It's definitely a journey, and you can survive it. I did it. You can do it too.